Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Al-Fatihah ala Abdurrahman bin Al-Habshan Allah wal akhirah wa ila hadrat Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Al-Fatihah. اللهم صل على الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نويت تعلم وتعليم وتذكر وتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى سيدنا محمد. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد. Okay, we continue with our kitab Risalatul Jami'ah by Habib Ahmad bin Zil Al-Habshi. We are now at Kitab Zakat, and okay, today we will go through Zakat Al-Fitr. So according to the matan, we will read the matan first. Zakat Al-Fitr wa Zakat Al-Fitri wajibatun ala kulli muslimin ila fadulat an gutihi wa guti man yagutuhu yawm al-Eid wa laylatahu arba'atu amdadin bimuddi Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam wa tajibu an-niyatu fil jami' wa la yajuzu an yasrifa az-zakata wal fitrata illa ila hurrin wa muslimin wa muttasifin bi sifati ahadil asnaf ath-thamaniyah كالفقير والمسكين وكونه غير هاشمين ولا مطلبين ولا مولى لهم ويجب استيعاب الموجودين منهم. So that's the matan. Okay, this is the translation. The Zakat of Fitr has to be paid by every Muslim who possesses more than his actual needs and the needs of his dependents on the day and the Eid day and the evening preceding it. Its amount is 4 mud of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Intention is required for all the mentioned types of zakat. It is not permitted to give zakat or Zakat Al-Fitr except to a Muslim who is characterized by one of the 8 characteristics, that is asnaf, such as being poor or destitute person, and is not a Hashimi or Muttalibi, nor the slaves. It is necessary to distribute to all of these groups. So we will go through one by one. We will go through what about this. Okay, just to recap, the types of obligatory zakat is Zakatul Mal, which is the zakat of the wealth, and Zakatul Badan, zakat of body. The zakat for Zakatul Fitr is the zakat of body, or it is also called Zakatul Badan. So its amount is sa'. Sa' is 4 mud. 4 mud of measure. The measurement is according to Rasulullah Sallallahu hand. Two hands cupped together of an average size man. That is about the approximately the amount should be given. That is 1 mud. So times 4. That is one mud. One sa' is 4 mud. So the origin of Zakat Al-Fitr, the same thing. We have went through in the earlier part of Zakat, the book, the Sunnah, and the Ijma'. It's the same thing. And Quran verses, many verses from the Quran stating the importance and obligatory of Zakat in general, which also includes Zakat Al-Fitr. And Sunnah, many hadith mentioning about Zakat in general, that cover all types of Zakat, and specific hadith also pointing towards the obligatory of paying Zakat Al-Fitr. So one of it is narrated by Ibn Umar. Allah's Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam enjoined the payment of 1 sa' of dates or 1 sa' of barley of barley as Zakat Al-Fitr on every Muslim slave or free, male or female, young or old, and he ordered that it be paid before the people went out to offer the Eid prayer. Hadith Bukhari. And another hadith also from Ibn Abbas said, the Messenger of Allah SAW made Zakat al-Fitr obligatory as a means of purifying the fasting person from idle talk and foul language, and to feed the poor. Whoever pays it before the prayer, it is an accepted zakat, and whoever pays it after the prayer, it is just a kind of charity. That is sadaqah. Sunan Abu Dawud. And also ijma' of Sahaba and scholars agreed that Zakat al-Fitr is obligatory. Nobody have ever rejected, no scholars or Sahaba have ever rejected uh, the payment of Zakat, the obligatory, the the wajibness of Zakat, and also Zakat al-Fitr. So name Zakat al-Fitr as it is obligatory upon completion of the obligatory fasting, the fast in Ramadan. Name al-Fitrah, meaning origination or innate of human creation. Like we fast in Ramadan, after the completion of the fast for 1 month, it's like a newborn. We are like a newborn. That means we back to our origin. So Zakatul Fitr is named after that. And names of Zakatul Fitr, there are many names for Zakatul Fitr. One of it is Zakatul Fitrah and Zakatul Badan, Zakatul Saum, Zakatul Fitrah, the same Zakatul Fitr, and Zakatul Badan is the body. Then Zakatul Saum, Zakat of the fast, and Zakatul Ramadan, and Zakat Shawwal, Zakat Shawwal, Zakat for Shawwal. So these are the names of Zakatul Fitr. They all mean the same. And the wisdom behind Zakat al-Fitr is actually purification of the person who fasted from idle talks and obscenity, as it has been reported from Ibn Abbas, like the earlier hadith. The actual hadith is actually what? Zakat al-Fitri tuhratun lis-sa'imi min ar-rafath wa ta'matun lil-fugara'i wal masakin. So this is because in most cases the fasting person is not free from vain actions such as idle speech and so on. So this sadaqah becomes an expiation for the person from the prohibited or detested speech he spoke, which lessens the rewards of good deeds or may even violate the fast. And there are other hadith but it's a weak hadith saying that the fast of a person is between the what is that? Baina sama wal ard, between the sky and the land, uh, and it is not lifted up unless the person pays zakat. But that doesn't mean the fast is not. Even though if he don't pay zakat al-fitr, his fast is still valid. It's just that he will sin because of not paying the obligatory zakat al-fitr. And another wisdom is generosity towards the poor and needy, and sparing them from begging on the day of Eid, which entails humiliation and shame on a day that is meant for rejoicing and happiness, so that they will join the rest of the community in celebrating the Eid. So it's for everybody to have on Eid day. Eid is a celebration, so uh, through Zakat al-Fitr, there will be no one there should be no one like begging for food. Everybody should have their like uh, minimum food for the day in the morning to celebrate the Eid. So that's some of the wisdom behind Zakat al-Fitr. And okay, then the matan says the Zakat of Fitr has to be paid by every Muslim who possesses more than his actual needs and the needs of his dependents on the Eid day and the evening preceding it. So from here we can see the ruling. One of the ruling of Zakat Al-Fitr is for a Muslim who possess more than his actual needs and needs of his dependent on the day of Eid and the evening preceding Eid. So even if he's poor, but he has he possess more than his actual needs and the needs of his dependents on the day of Eid and the evening preceding Eid, then he have to pay Zakat Al-Fitr. So it's wajib ijma'an, consensus among all the scholars on every Muslim, slave or free, male or female, young or old, sane or insane, any type of person, as long as he meets the condition, that is, he has more than his actual needs and the needs of his dependents on the day of Eid and the evening preceding Eid. That means the night, the last night of Ramadan and the morning of Shawwal. Then if he have more than what he actually need, then he have to pay Zakat Al-Fitr. And those who is liable, those who are liable for the payment of zakat is the one who has the obligations of nafakah on his dependents, like wife, children who have not reached puberty or maturity, slaves and parents. So to see who have to pay, because not everybody will have to pay for themselves. Some are under the dependent of their father or guardians and all. Then these people will have to pay for them. So we will go through this one by one. So the rule of thumb is, if you are the those who you are those who are those who you have to pay nafakah for, you have to pay for the Zakat Al-Fitr. So the conditions which necessitate Zakat Al-Fitr is first of all is a Muslim. No, Zakat Al-Fitr is not obligatory for non-Muslims. Only Muslims have to pay. Then second condition is to observe both periods of end of Ramadan and the beginning of Shawwal. That means the person have to be alive. The person have to be alive in the end of Ramadan and the beginning of Shawwal. That means if a person who died before, someone who fasted Ramadan and he dies before sunset, then there's no zakat al-fitr for him. But if he has paid, then you don't retrieve the zakat, but it's counted as charity. But it's not wajib for him. If, let's say if he have not paid, then he died before the person died before the sunset of the last day of Ramadan, then the family members do not have to pay for him, because he's not obligated to pay, because he don't meet this condition of being alive in the end of Ramadan and beginning of Shawwal. So same goes for a child who is born after the sunset of the night before first of Shawwal. That means the last night of Ramadan, the night of the first Shawwal, a baby is born. This baby is exempted from paying zakat fitrah, because he did not meet the end part of Ramadan. And third condition is possess in excess of his own needs and all his dependents for the day and night of Eid al-Fitr. If he don't have excess, then he don't have to pay. So the minimal, he just have to have the minimum of what he need for the night of the last night of Ramadan and the first day of Shawwal. That's it. Anything above that is considered excess in this topic, and also for his dependents. So possess more than his actual needs and needs of his dependent on day and the evening preceding it. This means for himself and his dependent. If he do not have enough for all, then pay for himself. He pay for himself first. Then if he got still have extra, then followed by his other dependents. So some scholars have recommended first pay for himself, then followed by his wife, then his wife's servants, if there is, if she has servants, then younger children, the younger children first, then the father and grandfather and great grandfather if still alive, then mother. These are the what is that, the tertib, the who he should pay first, he should pay for first. But there are differences of opinions here. So some say that pay for himself, then his wife, then his mother first, then and what is that? Yeah, younger children, and then followed by father. So uh, the the gist of it is pay for himself first, then after that, if he still have extra, then pay for his dependent. Then for his debts, second point to note is for his debts which are due. Uh, that means he have more than what he need after clearing his debts. After clearing his debts that are due. If it's not due yet, then still can be he still can pay the debts later. Then it's not considered a prevention for him to pay the zakat al-fitr. And also for his needs, the third point to note is for his needs according to his status. Example, house, servants, etc., but not excessive. So if he have two houses, but he need one house, uh, according to his status, he need one house. He's dependent, he got only one child, for example. Then he don't need two houses. And he don't have other cash at all. So what he need to do is sell one of his house to pay for the zakat al-fitr. That's an example. So same goes for servant. If he have 10 servants, then he have to let go some of them just to pay for the zakat for himself and his dependents. Uh, but if he's like let's say someone who receives a lot of guests. Naturally, people visit him a lot. He's of some person of a high ranking in his community. So it's normal for people like him to have like let's say 3 servants. Then that means his status requires him to have 3 servants. So if he has 3 servants but no more cash to give for zakat fitr, then he don't have to give. That's the ruling. If he does not have more than what he needs on the day of and the evening preceding it, then he is excused from paying zakat al-fitr for himself and his dependent. But if he have whatever he have to pay. Um, all those who are the rule like the maxim of this who have to pay for who is all those who are wajib for him to give nafaqah, wajib for him to pay for the zakat al-fitr. But if he have if he has no one to give nafaqah to, then there's no one. He only have to pay for himself, zakat al-fitr. But there are some exceptions from this rule. First is wife of his father. Wife of his father is it is his father's responsibility of uh, to pay for her nafaqah and zakatul fitr. But if let's say his father do not have enough to provide the nafaqah, his father could not provide the nafaqah for his wife, then the son should then is wajib for the son to give nafaqah for his father's wife, but not the zakatul fitr. Uh, this is one of the exceptions. Mm. By the way, wife of his father, that means is his stepmother. not his real, not his mother. Then slaves, relatives, and wives who are kafir, non-Muslim slaves or kafir or wives. They do not is wajib for the husband to give, or the master. This person have to give the slaves and the wives who are kafir nafakah. It's wajib for him to give nafakah to them, but not the zakat al-fitr, because there's no zakat al-fitr for non-Muslims. But the nafakah is still wajib. Like let's say a man married to a ahli kitab, a Christian or Yahudi, the real Orthodox one, then it's permissible according to Islam. You can marry an Orthodox Christian and Orthodox what is that? An Orthodox Jew. But nowadays it's like almost impossible to get the real Orthodox. So then the next one is the above can be wajib for him, the nafkah, but not the zakat al-fitr. Yeah. So all these exceptions showing that it's still wajib for him to give the nafkah, but not the zakat al-fitr. Okay, these are some problems, some problems that are often asked within this topic. A child, male or female, who has reached puberty and maturity and has enough, must pay for his or her own zakat al-fitr, as the nafakah is no longer under his father. So the person must pay for himself or herself. But if a girl, let's say 16 years old, just finished school, and she don't want to study anymore, but she's not fit to work yet, because she's still considered, like, let's say, young in her community. So it's still under the nafkah of his father. But if a male son, a son who is like 16 years old, and he don't want to study anymore, but he don't want to work, then the father can either tell him, you go, his father do not have to give him any more nafakah, because he is able to work. But if he's not matured yet, then the father have to provide for him. The best is provide for him while he gets stable and go out to fend for himself. And the second one is, if a husband cannot afford to pay for his wife who is wealthy, it is not wajib for her to pay for herself, the zakat al-fitr, but it is sunnah for her to pay for herself. That means the husband cannot afford to pay his the zakat al-fitr for his wife, because the husband is poor. Then it's not wajib for her to pay for herself, because her nafkah is now under the husband. But if she got extra money and she want to pay, it's okay. It's sunnah for her to pay for herself. But she cannot pay for her husband unless she gets the permission from her husband. Then a person who is focusing in seeking knowledge on fardu ain and cannot afford his own provision, his nafakah and zakat al-fitr is on his father. Let's say a 20-year-old still studying in maybe Medina or Mecca, or studying somewhere, and studying fardu ain or the deen of Islam, then he's like focusing and training to be an expert, or and etc. These kind of things, the father have to support this child and give him nafakah and also pay for his zakat al-fitr. But the father can also say, I don't want to support you, you go and work. In this case, the son can opt to either continue studying and fend for himself, or he stop and go to work. But if it's fardu ain, then the father must the father cannot ask the child to stop studying, because it is what is it? It is wajib for the father to give, to actually teach him or her, the children, fardu ain. But if he cannot, then he have to send to someone to train them in fardu ain, the basics. And if a woman has reached puberty, not married, and is wealthy, has enough income and access, she has to pay for her own zakat, not her father. Then those whose nafakah are not wajib on him, he will need their permission before paying for them. Without permission, it is not valid and will be counted as sadaqah. Example, his child who has reached puberty. If you want to help, best is to provide them and ask them to pay for themselves. That means if uh, you're not too sure whether this son is under uh, your nafakah or not, then the best is, or like your relatives who do not have enough to pay Zakat Al-Fitr, the best is you give them money or you give them provisions for them to pay for themselves. That's the best way to do it. Or you get the permission to pay for them. If you don't get the permission, then uh, it's not counted. It will be counted as sadaqah. So there's actually no loss. It's either counted as Zakat Al-Fitr or sadaqah. Then more problems. The father has to pay on behalf of his daughter if she cannot afford it. It means a daughter who is married, but the marriage has not been consummated, and the daughter is still staying with the parents, for example. In this case, the father still have to pay for her nafakah and zakatul fitr. But once the marriage has been consummated, then it is upon the husband, the nafakah and the zakatul fitr. The husband has to pay on behalf of a divorced wife whose divorce is not yet final. That means it's still in the iddah period of the first and second talaq. Because in first and second talaq, within the iddah period, there's still chance for rujuk. That means the nafakah is still under the husband, and so is the zakat al-fitr. But if it's the third talaq, then no more. And also the wife who is rebellious, nushuz, then there's no nafakah for her. It's not wajib for the husband to pay for her nafkah and also zakat al-fitr. And it is not obligatory to pay on behalf of a fetus that is still in the mother's womb. But if it is done voluntarily, there is nothing wrong with it. And some scholars even say sunnah to pay for it. If someone who is obliged to pay zakat al-fitr dies before giving it, it must be given from his estate, from whatever he has left. That means he is obliged to pay. And then he said, okay, I will pay in the morning of the Eid, after just before prayer. Then just before prayer, he passed away before he can pay the zakat al-fitr. Then in this case, he is obliged to pay, and he can pay, but it's not that he don't want to pay. He want to pay, but he didn't get to pay. So in this case, it is wajib to take from his estate, whatever he is obliged to pay. And next is, if a servant has set wages that are paid to him or her daily or monthly, then the employer do not have to give zakatul fitr on his or her behalf, because this person is a hired worker, and one is not obliged to spend on a hired worker because they have their own fixed wages agreed upon. So zakat fitr is on him or herself. Like nowadays we have maid and workers and all. These people are given wages and they agree to the wages to work. So these people are considered workers. So the Zakat Fitr is on themselves, not the employer. Zakat Fitr for orphans should be paid by the guardian. Okay, next topic is okay. Next point is we go on when to pay for Zakat Al-Fitr. Okay, first it is wajib one who observe alive both periods of end of Ramadan and beginning of Shawwal, even for a while. Even for a while after the sunset, he's alive. That means he have observed the beginning of Shawwal for 1 hour, let's say. Then he passed away. That means he have met the condition and he is obliged to pay. So a person who dies before sunset on the last day of Ramadan and a child born after sunset on the first night of Shawwal are exempted from the paying of Zakat Al-Fitr. And the superior time to pay Zakat Al-Fitr is day of Eid itself. The day of Eid Al-Fitr after sunrise. That's the best time to pay, the superior time. After sunrise, before Eid Al-Fitr prayers. Best is the best is after Fajr prayer. That is the best time after sunrise. After sunrise, then after you pray Fajr, you go to pay. You go and pay the Zakat Al-Fitr. The best is pay yourself to the whoever can receive. But if you want to pay to an amil who collects the zakat, it's also permissible. And permissible timing is from the beginning of Ramadan, from the first day of Ramadan until the until the first day of Shawwal before prayer, before Eid prayer. There is the permissible timing. Any time between that you can pay. And makruh is after the Eid prayer to sunset. That means still on the first day of Eid, after the Eid prayer to sunset, before the second Shawwal, because before the second night of Shawwal comes in. Except if there are valid excuses like waiting for a pious relative or needy who he wants to give the zakat to. He have intended to give this zakat to someone, to his relative, but his relative is on the way from somewhere far. So he waited for him and exceeded after the prayer. He still haven't come. Then Asar and almost Maghrib, then he come. Then he pay. This is makruh, but because of he's waiting for the excuse is valid, then it is not makruh. Then the haram timing is after the day of Eid, means second Shawwal, except for valid reasons. If valid reasons, then it's not is considered qada without sins, like waiting for his funds or food to arrive for him to use to pay the Zakat Al-Fitr. Or there's no one he have been looking for someone to receive his Zakat Al-Fitr, but no one can receive his zakat. Then in this case he should keep on searching, and he only found someone who can receive his Zakat Al-Fitr on the second day of Eid. Then there's no sin. It's considered qada because it's a valid excuse. Amount payable for Zakat Al-Fitr, its amount is 4 mud of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So for every one person, you pay 1 sa'. 1 sa' is 4 mud. 4 mud is 1 sa'. It's about 2.3 kilos. Some scholars, there are differences of opinion here. Some scholars say it's about 2.2 kilograms, some 2.3 kilograms, some say 2.75, some say 3 kilos. But the taking the higher rate is safer. for especially for zakat and whatever concerning giving, then you take the harder, the more stringent rulings. And one mud is two hands cupped together, measured according to the hands of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So it's approximately the same of an average sized man when they put the two hands cupped together. It's about there. Because Rasulullah SAW hand is not too big and not too small. So if one can afford only one less than, okay, if one can afford less than one sa, he have to pay whatever he can. That means after whatever he have left after um, taking into consideration whatever he needs for the day and the night preceding that Eid, he have like half a sa. Then he pay with half. Although the the payable amount is one sa, so now he got like only 1 kilo extra, 1 kilogram of rice. Then he pay with 1 kilo. What to pay for Zakat Al-Fitr? One sa or 2.3 kilograms of the staple food of the territory or the region in which the person is in. Example, rice, dates, barley, wheat, raisins, dried yogurt, lentils, and many other stuff that people eat for as their staple food. So these foods are normally nutritious food which brings energy. That's why they are staple food. Potatoes or whatever, as long as they are the staple food of the territory or the region. Like most of the places nowadays, you can say that it's rice and wheat, uh, and maybe some other parts, mm, maybe barley or whatever. But like dates, now if you give dates, it's still valid because Rasulullah SAW used to give with dates, give zakat al-fitr with dates. He has given with dates and other stuff also. But he has given with dates. That's why we cannot say that you cannot use dates, but you can use dates in fact. But it's best to give the 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 staple food of the territory. It is allowed to pay with superior food, but best to pay with the staple food of the territory. That means, let's say, in that place, in this certain place, people eat rice as their staple food. But let's say dates, let's say raisins is the uh, delicacy. So you can still give raisins, but the best is uh, to pay with the what they like. That's it. Okay, the scenario will be like in the region, people eat rice as their staple food, but raisins is considered superior. But so that means they eat both, and raisins is considered superior. But most of them, the staple food is rice. Then the best is to pay with rice. And Imam Abu Hanifa said, ask the people of that territory. You ask them, what do you prefer? If they prefer raisin, then give them raisin. If they prefer rice, give them rice. That is the best. And in Shafi'i, Maliki, and Hanbali, it is not allowed to pay using cash. You cannot use money. But in Hanafi, it is allowed. And many later scholars nowadays also allow paying with cash because it's easier and it's like preferred way of transaction. And even the recipients like to receive cash. But in Madhab Shafi'i, Maliki, Hanbali, is actually in Mu'tamad, it's not allowed. You must use food. You must pay in in the staple food, in form of staple food. So intention for zakat payment, intention is required for all the mentioned type of zakat. Not just Zakat Al-Fitr. Every zakat, all types of zakat must be accompanied with intention. It's needed for all types of zakat. This is to differentiate zakat from sadaqah, the voluntary charity. Although in the Quran stated like, what is that? In the Quran, innama sadaqatu lil fuqara wal masakin. This ayat, the sadaqah here means zakat. But if we say loosely like zakat, that's zakat. Sadaqah is voluntary charity. So to differentiate zakat and sadaqah, you must make intention of zakat or sadaqah fardu, sadaqah farad, then is considered zakat. Then intention need to be initiated at the time of handing over the zakat to the recipient or one who is entrusted to collect the zakat, the amil, and distribute them to those eligible. So when you hand over to the amil or you hand over to the recipient, the intention need to be initiated at that time. If handing over zakat to one who is entrusted to distribute them, that means to the amil, it is best also to give them permission to distribute, or the amil or someone trustee or someone who just A gives to B and B say I can pay for you your zakat. I know of this person who needs zakat. Then A say I give you this amount of money or whatever to be given out to those. I give you this amount of money as zakat to be given to the eligible recipient. Then B say, I agree to do so. Something like that, to just to have the permission clear. Then the matan, in the matan it says, it is not permitted to give zakat or zakat al-fitr except to a Muslim who is characterized by one of the 8 characteristics, asnaf, such as being poor or destitute person, and is not a Hashimi or Muttalibi nor their slaves. It is necessary to distribute to all of these groups. So that is those are the zakat recipients. It's mentioning about zakat recipients. I think we can stop here. The zakat recipient, we can go for in the next daras. So we stop at the intention for zakat payment, inshallah. Allah alam. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbana anfa'na bima 'allamtana rabbi 'allimna alladhi yanfa'una rabbi afaqihna wa faqih ahlana wa qarabati lana fi dinina ma'a ahli al-qudri anta wa dhakar. ربي وفقنا وفقهم لما ترتضي قولا وفعلا كرما وارزق الكل حلالا دائما واخلا اتقاعنا ما نحظى بالخير ونكفى كل شر. ربنا اصلح لنا كل شؤون وقر بالرضا منك العيون واقض عنا ربنا كل ديون قبل ان تاتينا رسل المنون. واغفر واستر انت اكرم من ستر. وصلاة الله تغشى المصطفى من الى الحق دعانا والوفاء بكتاب فيه للناس شفاء وعلى الآل الكرام الشرفاء وعلى الصحب مصابه الغرر. اللهم اهدنا بهداك واجعلنا ممن يسارع في رضاك ولا تولنا وليا سواك ولا تجعلنا ممن خالف أمرك وعصاك. وحسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العظيم. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.